Picture this. You're standing under the relentless, brutal Arizona sun. The desert landscape all around you is completely parched. You duck into a small gas station to get out of the heat, and suddenly the sky outside goes dark. Rain. Actual rain after nearly 200 days of bone-dry drought. You mentioned to the clerk how wonderful it is, how desperately the land needs it. But she just frowns hard and says, "It better not. Tomorrow is my first day off in 2 weeks and I want to wash my car." Let that sink in for a second. A wish against rain in a dying land just for the sake of a clean car. Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to dive into a story that perfectly captures how we view the very things that keep us alive. Section 1. The Great Food Disconnect. Losing touch with our sustenance. That gas station story brilliantly illustrates a concept we're going to call the Great Food Disconnect. We are actively losing touch with our sustenance. Think about that Arizona resident. That's a mindset born of complete and total disconnection from the land. But contrast that with a totally different scene. Imagine a young waitress in a cozy diner tucked into the green hills of Appalachia. As thunder booms and rain begins to fall, she looks out the window with genuine satisfaction and says, "Listen at that, don't we need it?" She's hoping for a good, long rain to feed the local crops. We're looking at two completely different worlds here. One is entirely cut off from what the earth requires, and the other is deeply rooted in understanding exactly what it takes for life to grow. So what's driving this disconnect? Well, our globalized food system has created a massive, literal gap between us and our plates. Today, the average food item travels a staggering 1,500 miles just to reach our tables. 1,500 miles! And that journey is heavily subsidized by cheap fossil fuels. We actually use nearly as much oil to feed ourselves, powering the tractors, manufacturing fertilizers, refrigerating everything, and trucking it across the country, as we do to fuel our cars. Section 2. A Radical Local Pledge. Stepping off the industrial food grid. This growing unease with the food system that just felt increasingly fake and unsustainable is exactly what sparked an extraordinary adventure. To combat this feeling, acclaimed author Barbara Kingsolver and her family decided to leave the modern convenience of Tucson, Arizona, and move to an Appalachian farm for a radical one-year experiment. They laid out strict ground rules to completely unplug from the industrial food machine. They wanted to truly know the story behind their meals, so they committed to eating only food produced within their own county, or at worst, their own state. They would grow their own garden, raise their own animals, and absolutely no out-of-season items. No strawberries trucked in from California in January, no bananas flown in from Ecuador. They did give themselves a few very limited fair trade exceptions for things that just don't grow in Appalachia, like a little coffee, olive oil, and spices. But other than that, they were all in. And to stick to this, the family adopted a pretty tough guiding philosophy. I want it didn't count. This wasn't about just punishing themselves or forced deprivation. It was about profound discipline. Simple cravings couldn't break the rules if the food wasn't locally sourced. They wanted to genuinely know the provenance of their meals, which most of the time meant knowing the exact person who grew it, which was frequently themselves. Section 3. Relearning the Seasons, the Rhythm of the Harvest. Plunging into this experiment led them directly into relearning the seasons. Aligning their lives with the earth meant actually waiting for food to come into season. For them, the year didn't really start in January, it started with the arrival of spring. And it's such an incredible journey. They kicked things off with what they called the vegetable prize for patience, asparagus. Asparagus actually takes 3 years from planting before you can even begin to harvest it, and its season is incredibly short. Waiting for it made tasting it an absolute celebration. Then summer arrived, bringing total abundance. They experienced this hilarious thing they called zucchini larceny, which is when your neighbors have so much summer squash they literally try to sneak it into your unlocked car at church. By August, they were dealing with hundreds of pounds of tomatoes. Autumn transitioned to harvesting root crops and intense canning parties, essentially creating real homemade fast food for the cold months ahead. And finally, winter was a time of quiet reliance on all their hard work, eating exclusively from their beautifully preserved pantry. Section 4. True Cost of Convenience, the Hidden Price of Perpetual Summer. Now, waiting months for seasonal food might sound really tough to a modern consumer. We are so used to having everything available all the time. But that perpetual supermarket summer, it comes at a really heavy cost. Our modern system relies heavily on industrial methods like CAFOs or concentrated animal feeding operations. The source material outlines how these industrial facilities raise animals in strict confinement, feeding them completely unnatural diets of cheap surplus corn instead of letting them forage naturally. After World War II, policies heavily shifted to favor these genetically limited commodity crops like corn and soybeans. The ultimate goal was just maximizing yield, which totally sacrificed taste and heavily exploited the landscape in the process. And because of this industrial system's massive surplus of cheap calories, which get hidden in thousands of highly processed products, Americans today consume 700 more calories per person daily than they did back in 1980. 700 more calories. The food industry basically figured out how to push these unwanted calories into our bodies through supersized portions and relentless marketing. It exploits our natural cravings and has resulted in a society that essentially suffers from a massive eating disorder.
Section 5. Reaping the benefits, surviving and thriving.
But here's the good news, there is a powerful alternative. Despite the intense physical labor of canning all those tomatoes in August or raising their own heritage breed turkeys, the Kingsolver family's experiment yielded incredible rewards. Let's talk economics for a second, because this part is wild. By growing much of their own food and cooking from scratch, they spent significantly less money. In fact, they fed themselves essentially well for roughly 50 cents per meal per person. 50 cents! Plus, of course, whatever bounty they pulled straight from their garden. And beyond the incredible economic win, there was a massive nutritional upgrade. Eating food at its absolute seasonal peak meant it was far more nutritious and flavorful than anything shipped across the country in the back of a refrigerated truck. Research actually shows that organic, locally grown produce contains 50% to 60% more antioxidants than mass-produced chemically sprayed counterparts. Think about that. You are literally getting vastly more nutrition in every single bite. So what was the final outcome of all this effort? Well, to quote the book directly, they hadn't just survived, they had absolutely thrived. The emotional and spiritual victory for the family was profound. They rediscovered ancient knowledge, they fostered amazing community connections with local growers, and they found a deep, almost primal satisfaction in tangible sustenance. It wasn't about being perfect 100% of the time. It was about consciousness, connection, and aligning their lives with the natural rhythms of the earth. Section 6. How to Start Small, Bringing the Revolution Home. Now, the truth is, you don't have to pack up your entire life and move to an Appalachian farm to participate in this food revolution or reap these benefits. You can start right where you are. Here are a few highly manageable, everyday steps you can take to bridge that gap between global convenience and local sustainability. Step 1, just pay attention. Start noticing where your food actually comes from. Read the labels. Ask questions at the grocery store or when you're out at a restaurant. Step 2, visit a farmer's market. Even if you just go to look around, it's an incredible education. Connect with local growers and see what's actually in season in your specific region. And step 3, try cooking just one meal a week entirely from scratch using seasonal ingredients. Rediscover your kitchen not just as a place of chores, but as a place of creation and genuine connection. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, provocative question to really chew on. Where will the ingredients for your very next meal come from? Take a moment today to reflect on your own connection to the earth, the miles your food traveled to get to you, and the hands that grew it. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this incredible journey. Keep learning, keep asking those questions, and I'll see you in the next explainer.